Hold your horses, dear. Instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, and oh, you knocked me down with a feather. Instead of, oh, you surprised me. Hey guys, that's how interesting figures of speech are. Use of figures of speech or poetic devices or literary devices display an enhanced understanding of the intricacies of the language English. Figure of speech enable us to look at a thing, emotion, or an occurrence or event in a very innovative way, or to express feelings we cannot easily put into words. They make our speech absolutely interesting and colorful indeed. So let's look at some of commonly used figures of speech in today's video. The first figure of speech I would like to talk about is simile. It's a figure of speech involving the comparison of one thing with another thing of a different kind, used to make a description more emphatic or vivid, that is, lively. Words like as and like are used in simile. The purpose of simile is to help describe one thing by comparing it to another thing that is perhaps seemingly unrelated. For example, as black as coal, as light as a feather. Her hands move like a pair of tongs. Let's move on to the next figure of speech, metaphor. The figure of speech implies comparison without the use of words like as and like. Metaphor is a means of asserting that two things are identical in comparison rather than just similar. For example, rat size, squirrel's game, taken from Stephen Spencer's An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum. Third example is alliteration. Alliteration is a figure of speech in which the occurrence of the same letter or sound, mind you, sound as well, at the beginning of words or next to or close to each other. For example, fingers fluttering, prancing proud, as in Aunt Jennifer's Tigers by Adriana Rich. The next figure of speech very commonly used is oxymoron. Oxymoron, incidentally, is also known as paradox. It's a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear together. For example, a deafening silence. Pretty ugly. In a lighter vein, happily married. Next figure of speech is irony. It's a figure of speech in which the expression of meaning through the use of language which normally means the opposite. We can even say an ironic situation is one that appears opposite to what one expects. For example, a marriage counselor files for divorce. Or, you know what? Charlie Chaplin once entered a Charlie Chaplin walk contest and came in 20th. That's ironic, of course. Next figure of speech that we would reflect on today is satire. Now, it's a poetic device in which there is use of humor, irony, exaggeration in order to ridicule, reveal, or criticize bad points. For example, Alice in Wonderland, novel by Lewis Carroll, satirizes corrupt political and judicial system of Victorian age. Let's move on to the next figure of speech, personification. A very interesting figure of speech in which human attributes are given to non-human beings, inanimate things, or maybe animals or birds. For example, Emily Dickinson's "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me." Next figure of speech, another interesting one, is cremamorphism. It's a figure of speech in which human beings are given qualities of inanimate objects. For example, taken from My Mother at 66 by Kamala Das, merry children spilling out of their homes. Next poetic device, hyperbole. It is a figure of speech in which exaggerated overstatements are used, which are not meant to be taken in the strict sense of the words. For example, Justin Timberlake in Cry Me a River. Now there's just no chance for you and me. There'll never be, and don't it make you sad about it? Cry me a river, cry me a river. Next figure of speech, guys, inversions. It's a figure of speech in which words are placed opposite in position, direction, or order or effect. For example, in the poem Love in Jeopardy by Humbert Wolff, there is an inversion of a very extraordinary kind. He wrote, "Here by the rose tree they planted once, of love in Jeopardy and Italian bronze." Next one, again an interesting one, honor, mutter, fear. It's a figure of speech defined as a word which imitates the natural sound of a thing. For example, bees buzz, snakes hiss. Next one, guys, metronym. Now, metronym is the figure of speech in which a symbol or sign is used for the thing signified. For example, Washington may be used for the US government. Next one, imagery. Imagery is a literary device that refers to the use of figurative language to evoke a sensory experience or create a picture with words for a reader. For example, in Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, a damp and moist scene has been described as, "It was a rainy morning and very damp. I had seen the damp lying on the outside of my little window. Now I saw the damp lying on the bare hedges and spare grass." Next figure of speech is allegory. It is a poetic device employed wherein there's a hidden meaning. For example, the fables of the lion and the mouse, the tortoise and the hare. There is a message and a hidden meaning as well. The last figure of speech for the day, retiration, also known as repetition, also known as rhetoric. It's a poetic device in which words and phrases and sometimes full lines are repeated in order to emphasize a certain idea or thought. For example, your favorite Bond, James Bond. Then the next example, give a man a fish and he will eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. That's a proverb, of course. So that's all in part 1 of figures of speech for today, guys. I hope you gain out of it. And yes, do make your speech interesting by using these figures of speech. See ya. Take care. God bless you all.